Welcome everyone to today's webinar on preventative maintenance. We're going to get started just in about a minute or two. We're going to give everyone an opportunity to log in. I do have the pleasure of being here with Beth Rappaport, so I wanted to thank her. Again, we'll be answering most, if not all of your questions. As you log in, feel free to, if you have any particular questions that you would like to have answered, please feel free to mark it into the Q&A section. We'll do our best to get through it today. If we're not able to get through it today, we'll have one of our team members will contact you to let you know how we could respond to that particular question. Again, we're going to give it just a few minutes to get started, just to about 11:01, and we'll get started with the webinar. Thank you again for being here today. Again, for all of those of you logging in now, myself and Beth, we're excited to get this webinar started on preventative maintenance. We're giving everyone just about a minute or two to log in, and then we'll go through the formal introductions. If you have any questions with regards to preventative maintenance for your community, or if you're a manager for your particular association that you manage, feel free to put it in the Q&A. We will do our best to get to every question and hopefully get the answers for you during today's webinar. All right, so let's stay true to what we said, Beth. It's 11:01. I think we should get started. Today I have the pleasure of having Beth Rappaport here with me with Brightview. Beth Rappaport has lived in South Florida since 1991 and is very dedicated to our community and making it a better place to live. She has worked extensively in community association arena, both professionally and on a volunteer basis. She brings a unique and fresh perspective to all those that she serves. She attended the University of Miami, where she obtained her BBA in International Finance and Marketing. And she's a Florida International University graduate, where she obtained her MBA in concentration in marketing. She's a licensed CAM and recently earned her CMCA. Congratulations on that. Thank you so much for being here today with us, Beth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure.
No problem. A pleasure as well. As for myself, my name is Rafael Aquino. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Affinity Management Services. We are a boutique association management company focusing in Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. We have an excellent team that's here to serve your communities. But more importantly, we're dedicated not only to our clients, but also the residents that we serve. So enough about us. I think most of you are here to learn a little bit more about preventative maintenance and what measures you should be taking within your community. So hopefully it'll be a great webinar for both the managers and the board members or future board members that are on this webinar. So why don't we get started, Beth? Why don't we, if you could give the audience a little bit of a perspective, especially since you're a CAM and a CMCA, which is a huge thing to have, especially being that you're a vendor on the vendor side of things. It'll help us from the management side. But if you could give the audience today a little bit of perspective from your side of what you believe preventative maintenance for a community is.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, you know, right now everybody is focused on the fact that hurricane season started yesterday. And the reality is that if you waited until yesterday to start doing preventative maintenance or hurricane prep, you're too late. You know, preventive maintenance and using best practices is really a year-round process on the property. And it really requires a lot of collaboration between the landscaping team and the property management team to make sure that their property is looking its best and that there are no maintenance issues that need to be addressed.
Excellent. Yeah, and I would agree with you. I mean, most of the planning, especially now that we're walking into hurricane season, opened up yesterday. The predictions I'll go into a little bit later of what they're predicting. But overall, yeah, the preparation needs to start early. From a management perspective, you know, we see preventative maintenance as a very important key component in the way that you, as a board, that you manage your community, or as a manager and the way that you manage your community. You know, it really depends on the community of how much effort gets put into it, because some communities do have smaller team members or some don't even have any. But for those that have a medium size or larger team members, everyone should have a preventative plan, but especially those that have larger ones, you have the abilities to really be able to track what's going on with your community and with its assets, what we call its assets, which, assets being any piece of equipment, let's say that has a value or use of over $5,000. You're going to kind of want to track those pieces of equipment, want to track the model number, the serial number, its potential life expectancy. And hopefully you have some kind of software to be able to track these kinds of issues. There's multiple things that you could do outside of just tracking the equipment itself, is also determining what's going to be the routine maintenance that's going to be applied. That's going to be, I said, done for that particular piece of equipment. So a simple example that I like to give boards is, let's say an AC unit. You want to know how many AC units you have in your clubhouse or in a building on each floor. What are the model numbers, serial numbers? What's the routine maintenance that's going to need to occur for that piece of equipment? If it's air filters, if it's just checking if it has any water leaks, if you have a good software, you're able to track this, set up these routine maintenance work orders within the system. And it makes the life both for the manager, your building engineer, your maintenance individual much easier. As well as when issues arise, you don't have to be jumping through hoops to find out what equipment it is, what's the model number. You can easily provide that to your vendor. So when it comes to, let's say, from a landscaping perspective, what are some of the preventative maintenance items that you believe managers and board members alike should be taking into consideration, Beth?
Definitely the first and most important thing is tree care. And the best thing really is to have an arborist come out around January, come take a look at the trees, look for any structural deficiencies, any issues with pests, maybe some dead limbs, in order to make a recommendation as to how the trees should be properly treated when it's time to do the tree pruning, which usually happens around March or April. And it's really important to do this well before hurricane season so that the tree goes into hurricane season in its best health. And really one of the kind of unintended, benefits is that by doing this, you're reducing the amount of debris that's going to be on your property when a storm event does come through. And so it's really helpful to get those dead branches, diseased branches, get that all off the property before storm season.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And while you and I both know what an arborist, maybe you could give our listeners today an understanding of what an arborist does and what their responsibility is when it comes to tree trimming.
Yes, absolutely. Not everybody is an arborist. There's a lot of education and certification that goes into it. And an arborist is basically like a tree doctor. If you have a medical issue, you're not going to go, to just anybody, you're going to go to a doctor. And so it's really the same thing for your trees. And, we have at our company many certified arborists, and they have a tremendous passion for what they do, and they have a love for the trees. It's amazing how much they love the trees and really genuinely care about them and want to be in their best health on your property.
Excellent. And is it very common for organizations to have an arborist? Let's say if an organization doesn't have one, what steps do they have to take to be able to hire an arborist, I should say, sorry.
Yeah, there's definitely, you can get a third party arborist to come to your property. You will of course have to pay a fee for their time and for whatever report that they do. But it's really a best practice to do that. And in some instances, when you're dealing with a difficult situation with the tree's health, perhaps the tree is fighting an unusual disease, sometimes it's good, just like you would do for yourself, going to the doctor to get a second opinion from a neutral third party arborist.
Excellent. And from a management perspective, I know that an arborist is a very important component when you're going through your tree trimming process. Depending what your local ordinances are, or state ordinance, you need to keep in mind that certain trees can only be trimmed a certain percentage. Oaks are one of those, that there are certain percentages, and depending what city you're in. So plantation has certain regulations and so forth. So you want to keep that in mind. So before you go into just starting to trim trees, you need to make sure that you have some kind of plan of action and you're working with a strong partner that can help you and guide you throughout that process. I know many times
Yes.
board members want us managers to do it all and know it all, but the reality is that we're only as strong as the partners that we work with. So for us, it's very important that, we're not only working with the right people, with the right organization as well, that can kind of support us, educate us through the process, and keep, our boards abreast of any new laws or any new changes with that particular vendor or that particular organization.
Yeah, there are certain tree trimming practices that are actually illegal. So you never want to find yourself on the wrong side of, a county ordinance when it comes to trimming trees. You should
Correct.
never trim more than 1/3 of the tree at a time. And so a common mistake is on a property that maybe, they kind of forgot about the trees. They really didn't have a good management company that had them on a good maintenance schedule for the trees. And the trees have been neglected for a few years. And now they want to catch up and do like a really massive, very hard trim and a hard prune. And you really can't do that really past more than removing 1/3 of the tree. It's just not healthy for the tree.
Correct. Also, it's not even healthy for cost.
Right.
Because if you wait so long to trim trees, we try to recommend to do twice a year. But we do understand that certain associations, they have a tight budgets where they don't believe that they should do it twice a year. So, the way we try to let them know is, listen, if you do have a storm and a lot of these trees come down, as you stated, the dead limbs and so forth, the cost to have to dump all of that extra debris, it's going to be significantly more, especially with what we experienced with Irma. The costs just escalate than just going through routine maintenance, and also the cost moving forward. Once you finally get it caught up, it's going to be a little bit more balanced out rather than having to trim the X amount to get the tree into somewhat of a normal shape. And when it comes to, let's say, like vegetation management, what steps should a manager or board be taking when it comes to vegetation management?
Definitely walking the property regularly. We
Mhm.
like to at least once a month walk the site with the property manager or the landscape manager to get eyes on everything together and look for areas where, sometimes behind a maintenance shed or around a dumpster on a fence line where vegetation might start to build up. And so it's really important, in cases, for example, one common thing we'll see is vines on power lines. So
Okay.
it's really important to stay on top of that because they grow quickly, and to get, FP&L to come out and handle that because they will do that.
Mhm.
And just other areas, around the property where vegetation can accumulate, because really, if there is some kind of a storm event, it can make those areas prone to hazards and risks.
Okay. Excellent. And that's definitely something you don't want your vendor touching if it has to do with the FPO line.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely not. And in South Florida we have many lakes, and it's not uncommon to begin to start seeing shoreline and soil erosion. What's your take on what managers and board members should take when it comes to those kinds of situations?
Yes, it's really important to stay on top of erosion and look for the signs of erosion around the property and put together an action plan to install French drains and different types of things that can help direct the water to a place where it needs to be, so that it's not creating erosion and it's not only unsightly, but it's unsafe. And around a lake or around a water line, it can create a hazardous situation where somebody can you know, trip and fall or have an accident, or it becomes difficult to maintain from a landscaping perspective. So we definitely want to look out for erosion and signs of it and put together an action plan to address it.
Yeah, correct. You do see it, especially now, as the rainy season starts to increase, and especially around lakes, it's important to keep a very close eye on what's going on, because if you wait too long, the costs again are just going to increase. Sticking to today's topic of preventative maintenance, it's important that your managers and your boards alike are touring the properties with both the vendor and the specialist. We've seen, especially with lakes, that the cost to be able to bring things back to normal, pretty high, and it's just because they don't have the proper vegetation around the lakes or the proper items that keep the lake running properly. So it's very important that that's at front of mind when dealing with that. So Beth, we've seen some fires, unfortunately, in the past few weeks, both in Palm Beach and Martin County. What steps do you recommend that for associations, especially those that are out west, so close to that vegetation? What do you recommend that they do to mitigate any fire issues?
Yeah, it's really scary, and it's real, and it's happening currently in the Tri-County area. And so, this is where vegetation management comes into place, making sure that there are no tree branches touching roof lines. That's really something to look out for. Also, to make sure that all your trees are trimmed at least 6 feet off the ground, because that will provide a little buffer so that if there is a fire, that the fire doesn't catch to the tree and start spreading very rapidly. And, we see this sometimes with communities that have like a maintenance shed,
Okay.
where they might have chemicals in the shed or fuel in the shed, and gas powered tools, and all of a sudden, something happens and there's a fire, and then it just gets out of control. So by keeping the vegetation away from the building, away from the roof line, a few feet off the ground, it really allows for more time to respond and help it from spreading into something much larger.
Correct. And whilst much of this sounds like very like common sense, we do have to keep in mind that that's the importance of making sure that the manager's touring around on the board and everyone's, has a keen eye. Because as Beth said, it's just these simple little things that occur, and all of a sudden you have a catastrophe in your hands, and hopefully no one hurt, but it can happen. So from a landscaping perspective, I know we deal with it a lot when it comes to landscaping vendors or irrigation vendors. Of what's the right thing to do? Is it to hire individual landscaping company and then someone else to handle the irrigation, or whether to combine the two? I know from our side, we've seen, both sides of it. Some boards feel that you hire the same company, they're kind of doing one, everyone's gaining on it. If you hire two different companies, then everybody's pointing the finger at each other. What's your recommendation on what board members and managers should do when it comes to dealing with the irrigation repairs within the community and the preventative maintenance behind it as well?
We always recommend that one company handling both the landscaping and the irrigation is the best practice.
Mhm.
Because, for example, let's say there's a problem and a plant dies. Yeah, we just put in a new installation at the front monument or in a cul-de-sac island, and all of a sudden the vegetation is all dead. And then it becomes a finger pointing who's responsible
Correct.
between between the irrigation company and the landscaping company. So it's really better. It keeps that accountability in the same place. So, if we plant a bunch of plant material and it dies, we replace it. We're responsible for replacing it. And of course, look at the root cause of what happened here. Why didn't this thrive? But it really is the best practice. And also from a supervisory perspective, the person that's handling the irrigation, if they're not reporting to the landscaping company, then that creates some additional issues that really could be avoided by just keeping everything together.
Correct. And I would agree with you. I found it to be a much easier to be able to deal with one vendor than rather two, and having to kind of get in the middle of the feud of who's responsible for what. It's been much easier for our managers. One important point to keep in mind for the board members and the managers that are listening, it's that reporting factor that Beth, keeps mentioning. What kind of reports, and again, this is from a management perspective, is how are you holding your vendors accountable? So what are the responsibilities that they have? Are these items negotiated within the agreement? Are certain reports being provided either weekly, monthly? What are the timeframes that the vendor can commit to on those reports? And making sure that you're reviewing those reports so that, if there is something that occurred, you have something that you can kind of fall back to and say, well, this wasn't reported, or vice versa. That's been reported for the past 2 to 3 months and no one has taken action. And this is why, this grass or this tree, whatever it may be, is having these issues. So it's important to make sure that you're receiving these reports from the vendors that are providing, and hopefully they are, because it's going to make everyone's life a little bit easier. So I know, Beth, you and I were chit-chatting yesterday prior to the webinar when it comes to insurance and how smarter agents and insurance companies have been getting. Maybe if you want to give our viewers some of the tips that you've been hearing out on the street.
Yes, definitely. One thing that is pretty commonly coming up, especially in homeowners associations, is a situation where the common area trees are touching a homeowner's roof, and the insurance company is coming out and saying, we're not going to renew this policy until this corrective action has been taken by the homeowners association and the landscaping company. And this started happening maybe about a year ago. And when it first started happening, I think we all were like, they just want their tree trimmed for free. But it actually is legitimate. And with the surge in home sales and so many homes turning over in the community, new buyers coming in, maybe with, a different insurance company, a new set of eyes on it, it's coming up a lot.
Yeah.
And so a lot of associations have been working to kind of take another look at those common area trees to make sure that they're not infringing upon the resident's property or roof line.
No, and it makes sense, right? I mean, insurance rates are going up. You have a ton of trees that aren't trimmed properly. If the tree does fall and it's there on the neighbor, it's going to cause damage. That insurance company is going to have to cover it. So it makes total sense that these things are coming up. Hopefully, it'll help those board members that don't have that much of a need of a want to do the tree trimming, to make them do the necessary tree trimming, because it's going to make everybody's life a little bit easier.
Yes.
So why don't we switch gears here? I mean, talking about hurricanes, we brought it up several times. Let's go into kind of some of the hurricane items and some of the preventative things that should be taken care of. But before we go into that, I wanted to kind of give our listeners a little bit of an idea of where we're at this year with storms. This was straight from NOAA's website. As of May 20th, NOAA has a 70% confidence on the following numbers. They're stating that we should have in South Florida anywhere between 13 to 20 named storms with winds above 39 miles an hour. From those, we'll probably have 6 to 10 that could be hurricanes. That's winds of above 74 miles an hour. And they're saying we can have anywhere between 3 to 5 major hurricanes. So anything from a Cat 3 to a Cat 5. So over 111 miles an hour. They're saying it's going to be a weaker year than they believe it's going to be a weaker year than normal. However, hearing 3 to 5 major storms really makes me shake a little bit inside. I don't know about you. We've been very fortunate, even though, Irma did some damage, but we haven't had a really strong category 4 or 5 in some time. And I hate to say it, but I know it's overdue. So with that said, I wanted to touch up on a couple things that board members and managers should keep in mind, especially during this time of year. It's number one is your storm drains. Flooding has become a very common thing here in South Florida, and it's going to continue. So it's important that you're keeping those storm drains cleaned, that you're hiring a storm drain company to come either before rainy season or after. Again, some boards only do it once, to come in, clean those lines out, clean out those French drains, make sure everything gets jetted, and any debris that may be in there gets cleared out, so that when a strong rainstorm or a hurricane hits, that water is moving where it needs to move, as it was designed to be. From a landscaping perspective, are there any tips that you think that our boards or managers should be keeping in mind when it comes to the hurricane?
Well, I think the most important thing is to have a good hurricane contract. And the better management companies like yourself have that as part of your annual calendar to make sure that those contracts are in place before hurricane season. But we have seen in the past couple of years, communities that got caught off guard for whatever reason, they did not have a contract. And then when it came time to clean up after the storm, they experienced delays getting service. They paid prices that were not market pricing. They were really, charged a lot of money to clean up. And so all of these issues can be prevented by having a hurricane contract, which will state, how the damage will be assessed. It will have the rates, the labor rates, the equipment rates, the pricing for taking trucks full of debris to the waste facility, and all those things clearly outlined. As well as who to call and what immediate steps to take. how cleanup will be prioritized. The first and most important thing is to clear the roadways,
Mhm.
then work on debris that might be leaning on the structures. All those types of things is really important to have outlined and agreed to.
I would agree with you. And an important point that you mentioned there at the end is understanding what the responsibilities are going to be. I know there are certain associations that want all their trees cleaned up within the first week or two. We had a couple of those clients during Irma. And those were their expectations. That's what they expected from the vendor, but that was negotiated, earlier on. In most cases, the way we saw was, as you said, Beth, is the cleaning of the sidewalks, cleaning of the streets, just moving the debris to an area where it's not going to cause any potential insurance issues or any damages or any slip and fall or any damages to any property for vehicles and so forth. Then later it was staged out to be able to dump that debris, because in many cases it's just impossible to expect a vendor to be at every single site at every single moment of the day. It's impossible, especially when you have these large HOAs where they have a lot of oak trees and so forth, and it makes it very difficult to be able to do that. So the boards and managers should be keeping a close eye on that.
Our goal is to get the property back to as normal as possible within about a week after
Excellent.
the all clear is given. And we do have the option that we can send crews and equipment from other areas to accompany the regular on-site team and help get that extra cleanup done.
Yeah, which makes sense. Again, because of the size of the organization that you are, you could probably bring in your fellow coworkers from other areas. Since you service such a large area, then those are options and things that board members and managers alike need to keep into consideration when you're making your selection process. And what are the impacts to an association, let's say during a hurricane, for not having that proper trim care? Like, do you have some examples of maybe of what you've seen and what the difference would have been if they had the proper trim care prior to that hurricane?
Yes, we had some communities, particularly after Hurricane Irma, which was really one of the larger, more recent storm events, where it was just an excessive amount of debris. They didn't even have a really enough place to store the debris. The municipality wasn't coming to pick it up right away. And in some cases, that debris sat for 6-7 weeks. And then it added to other problems, rodents and, unsightliness, killing the landscaping near where the debris was stored. And it just created a huge backlog.
Right. And with regards, I know what we've seen is that, in these instances where many associations that aren't well prepared, you'll get vendors coming in, as I stated earlier, from different parts of the state, and, saying that they're landscaping companies and coming in and saying, I can trim your trees and I can take care of this for you. And you can find yourself in a very tough situation. What kind of coverages, not necessarily dollar amounts, because I don't think you or I are insurance agents, but what kind of coverages should you say from a landscaping perspective should our managers and board members alike have in consideration of what these companies should have?
Yeah, so it's very tempting, right? The residents are upset, there's
Mhm.
debris, they're calling, get this out of here, it looks so gross. The community across the way, there's debris is already gone. What's going on? You're not running the community well. So, it's very tempting. Some guys come in with a truck and it
Correct.
seems like, oh, what's the harm? Let's just have them, do some of this work. But really, you have no idea where they are, where they're from, if they're licensed or anything. And so it's important to make sure that you look at the certificate of insurance, that you verify that the certificate of insurance is not counterfeit in some way. Workers' comp, business tax receipts, SunBiz, all those types of things. Not to mention the other things that a big company would provide, like a background check, criminal check, and those types of things, in order to not find yourself in an undesirable situation after already having the tragedy of a storm.
Correct. And that's again the importance of being prepared. If you already know who you're going to deal with, you could already have confirmation on the workers' comp, the automobile, and all the policies that they should currently have. Also, again, that there are some benefits. It's not a plug to Affinity, but there are some benefits of working with a management company, because part of our responsibility is going to be to make sure that they have the proper insurances and so forth. And we work with a third party vendor that does that on our behalf. So it's very important that you keep that front of mind. And when it comes to, let's say, reporting, and I know I spoke about it a little bit earlier, what kind of reporting does Brightview provide to its managers and its board members alike?
We will, we have our own reports, and we know that associations also have their reports. So we'll
Mhm.
work with whatever format you would like. And we usually do, weekly and monthly reports. We will meet with the board if that's requested. We'll meet with the landscaping committee, whoever has been tasked with being in charge of the landscaping on the property. To work with them and make sure that there's an open line of communication.
Excellent. Yeah, that the reporting is key. Again, I like to state it that we're only as good as the partners that we have, and having strong partners makes not only our lives easier, but our board members as well. So, from a management side, depending again on the property size, and if you're a portfolio account, if you're an on-site account, you should be receiving reports on a minimum every 2 weeks, if not weekly, if you're an on-site property. So that way, at least you're up to speed with what's going on. And again, that report is usually customized depending on the need of the particular association, but it kind of gives you a high level of what's going on. Where are you with your projects? Where are you with your tree trimmings? Where are you with your whatever annual inspections that you have? Kind of give you an update of what's going on with the community, so that so that you and your board are top of mind, what the manager's top of mind projects are. When it comes to, let's say, safety throughout this process of, preventative maintenance, what's your protocol? What's your organization's protocol? What are the steps that you take to ensure the safety of not only your employees, but also the safety of the residents as you're doing your work?
Yeah, safety is a really top priority. Our employees, our property management, coworkers, the residents, everybody. And so it's really important, this is where maintenance reporting is really important, so that if somebody sees something, that we immediately are able to go out there and triage it and figure out what action is taken. The short-term action, putting up cones, caution tape, some kind of barriers to the area before we're able to make the repairs. A lot of times the board is going to want some pricing, and there's some back and forth that causes a delay with fixing the problem. And the most important thing is to make sure that the temporary solution doesn't become permanent.
Yeah.
How many times have we seen something on the property where there's a hole in the ground with a cone in it, and somebody says, hey, I think that's been there for like 6 months now. Are we going to do something about it or what? And then all of a sudden it's on Facebook and Nextdoor and, all those places you don't want it to be.
Yeah.
So, that's the type of thing where we work with our property management partners and whatever work order software they have. And we carefully track, 24 hours, 48 hours, 96 hours, what's the plan of action to get this problem corrected.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, before we get into the next question, I did want to let our audience know that if you have any questions, please feel free to chime in. Both Beth and I will do our best to answer your questions. So feel free to put any questions that you may have, and we'll be glad to answer them. But yeah, Beth, you bring up an important point, especially now in the midst of hurricane, is, the cones and the safety. Part of what you should have as a board in your hurricane plans, it's just what are the steps that you're going to take to be able to protect your residents. And that does include, are you going to have caution tape, or are you going to have cones? How are you going to notify the residents of these concerns? How is the manager going to update you, and what frequency? Is it going to now be weekly, or is it now going to be every other day, since it is an emergency that you're dealing with? So as you take a look at your hurricane plan, I hope you've already kind of took the dust off it, and take a look that you make sure you have these things. Also, one of the items that sometimes does get missed is, water and supplies for the team members that are going to be assisting, or for your committee members. You need to make sure that you're taking care of the team, of the management team, of the committee team, of whoever is assisting and vendors alike, to make sure that you have an excess amount of water, excess amount of snacks, so that as these individuals are working, we're taking care of them so that they can take care of your community properly.
And also, personal protective equipment. Everybody now has face masks
Yeah.
after the past year. So we're good on the face mask, but, also protective eyewear, gloves, and all the different things that, you should have, boots, even protective boots. We never want our community volunteers, well-intentioned, to put themselves in harm's way, even with heat stroke or anything else, going out there trying to do everything that they do for the community and help people, but jeopardize themselves.
Correct. Excellent point. So Beth, we're kind of up with our questions. I want to give our audience maybe a minute or two. Is there anything else that you would like to add that maybe we may have missed in our conversation today?
One of the nice things about us is that we very much look to partner with our property management partners on the site, because to the residents, we're one team with the one team that serves them. And there are a lot of things that we can help with that communities might struggle with, especially communities that don't have an on-site team. So we can be the extra hands to put the pool furniture away, to put shutters on the clubhouse, or help put shutters on, condo units, things like that. Because when those types of preparations are happening, it's already too late to do any landscaping. There's kind of a cutoff time for landscaping, 96 hours before the storm. So, we're free and happy to help and assist in those ways, provide additional services to the community and to the team.
Excellent. And just as yourself and your firm, we believe in having strong partnerships with our vendors, and it's just as important to really have strong partnerships with board members alike. We can, I say it all the time, we're only as good as the board members that we serve. So if the partnership doesn't exist with the board, it makes it very difficult for us, as well as any vendor, to be able to do the job. We have to keep in mind that none of us are perfect. We're working to be perfect, but that's a lifelong journey. And I think we never get there, but we work towards it. So it's important to keep that in mind and have that sense of, understanding that everyone is doing what they can. What you need to do as a board member and as a manager is just set the proper expectations so that things are clear, and that your relationship with the particular client or, with the vendors are on point and everyone's on the same page. There has to be a slight room of error. We do our best to do 100%, but that's not the case. So we have to keep that in mind.
And I think, that's the silver lining that's come out of the pandemic, is that all of our communities have made tremendous improvements in communication, two-way communication, how to communicate to the residents and how to make the residents feel heard as well. And I think everyone really, over the past year and change, has gone out of their comfort zone to try to leverage technology in order to improve communication. And it's been great. And I think for me, one of the most heartwarming things out of this whole pandemic experience is seeing how hard everybody has tried to make this work and make this work for the residents and the community. So much effort has gone into making things happen. And it's just really amazing.
No, it really is. And I'm happy you brought that up, because, we've seen, for years, we've been trying to push the technology and getting on Zoom, and it's been a challenge. But now this has definitely accelerated the process. And as you and I were stating before the webinar, it's made things much easier, not only for us as vendors and as service providers to our clients, but I believe it's also made it easier for our board members just to sit in the comfort of their home with a coffee, not have to worry about even, just they could be in their pajamas and they could go host a board meeting. And we found that we get more interaction as well as from our residents, because our residents are able to attend from home or from, as far as wherever they are, maybe China, Brazil, wherever they're at, they can, they are able to attend a meeting. But
that's what's been amazing, is that it's become actually a more inclusive environment.
Correct.
So maybe there was a mom that wanted to come to the meeting, but didn't want to bring her kids, or somebody that was out of town or works odd hours, or whatever the circumstance might be, doesn't like to drive at night, and so this really, once we got through that learning curve of how to use the technology, has really opened it up, and we've seen, much increased attendance and engagement because of it.
Excellent. I would agree. So Beth, we don't have any questions and answers, so I think we may wrap up a little bit earlier. Either we answered everyone's question, or I hope we didn't bore anyone. If you have any closing remarks for our board members or managers that are here with us today.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We value your time. We know you're busy. And, with Brightview, we love feedback, no matter what it is. We use it to consistently improve our services. So please feel free to reach out, and we're always happy to talk to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Beth. And I wanted to share our screen. I'll be sharing screen here. If you want to pull out your cell phones, you could put your cell phone turn on your cameras and put your cell phone over that QR code, and it'll send you to our YouTube page where my team and I will post the YouTube video for today in case you want to share it with any board members. Also, make sure that you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do have weekly videos as well as webinars that we post there. For the board members and managers that are here with us today, as Beth stated, I wanted to thank you and more importantly, applaud you for taking the time out of your day to be here with us today. It goes to show to the level of commitment that you have to your residents, as well as to your improvement in being a strong leader within your community. If you have any further questions for either myself or Beth, our contact information is listed here. If you're not able to write it down now, please don't hesitate to reach out to my team. I did want to thank you, Beth. It was a pleasure, as always, to have a webinar with you. I look forward to doing another one with you. And again, thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Raphael, and thank you,
Great
everybody.
Bye-bye.